Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of High Energy Girl. And today's amazing guest is Adele Spraggon, who is an award-winning author, a thought leader, and an international speaker and trainer. She has been awarded the 2020 Women of Inspiration Award, and in 2021, she is recognized as the top behavioral expert of the year. Her book, Shift, 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment, has won 3 awards and is sweeping the globe, transforming how people are setting and achieving their goals. Now, Adele is an expert in changing patterns in your brain so that we can live a better life and change our behavior. I am super excited for you to get to listen to our conversation, and I am going to commit to taking her 8-week course so that I can make myself a better human as well. So I can't wait for you to meet her. She's absolutely lovely. Let's go and say hello. Hey everyone, welcome to High Energy Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluhige, health coach and personal trainer and founder of highenergygirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you encouragement or an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode. Please also join our awesome Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and I'm looking forward to see you on the inside of that group and hope you enjoy today's show. Guess what, everyone? My book is out. It is a revised and updated edition of a book I wrote 5 years ago called No Frickin' Way, 21 Days to Ditch the Diet and Lose Weight the Keto Way by Loving Yourself to Health. When I first wrote the original book, I was not a believer in the low-carb movement, but after all the years of research I've done, I am sold out for life. In this book, you will learn about all the lies you have been fed, how to engage in loving self-care, how to eat nourishing foods that provide massive energy, why the ketogenic diet is not a fad, how to heal your body through fasting, why you should move your body to get stronger, and how to create an empowering mindset. Start reading now and finally achieve the high energy and positive body image you deserve. Check it out on Kindle, on Amazon. And if you like it, please leave us a review because this will help more people find it. I really want to inspire people to not deprive themselves, but to nourish themselves with loving self-care and amazingly healthy food so that they can age stronger. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Hey, Adele, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yay. So for the listeners that don't know you yet, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Adele Spraggon. I'm a behavioral change expert. I've been in the field of behavior change for over 30 years. And I work with people's brain patterning. So I work a little bit differently than most coaches who work at the level of actions or behaviors or beliefs. I work in the underlying regions of the brain, the parts which actually give rise to those actions, behaviors, beliefs.
Wow, that's so interesting. What led you to that?
Well, I was in behavior change, as I said, for 30 years. And for the first 15 or so of those, I was following all the methodologies that I have been taught to achieve my goals. And frankly, they weren't working for me. So I was approaching it in 2 ways. So first of all, I had terrible anxiety attacks. I know we were talking earlier, Tracy, and we were discussing stress, and that was one of my primary patterns. I had, I think I was born with a very high level of anxiety. And then when my daughter was born, it just spiraled into panic attacks that I would have every day. And I was trying all the methodologies that I've been taught. So I did therapy, I did positive thinking, I did affirmations, I did all of it. I tried to use willpower and control. At the same time, I was also using Eastern approaches. So meditation, I became a meditation facilitator. I was doing Kundalini yoga, which is a very strenuous form of yoga. So I was trying everything I could, and nothing was working for me. And, I recall one night I got up in the middle of the night. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was starting to have a panic attack. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do this again. So I sat down on my couch and I just started journaling. And I started asking why. Now, at this point, I had also enrolled in university. So I was studying the human brain. I wanted to know how the brain makes decisions and why my brain was panicking the way it was panicking. So I kept just asking the word why on this page, and I didn't expect an answer. So I was quite surprised when my mind started to write on that page. This is going to sound very strange. And I started reading the answer that was being written there. And what was being written there left me awestruck, because my pen, being written in my handwriting, of course, it was just the subconscious regions of my brain that had kicked in, started to share about brain patterns and how I needed to change the pattern for panic if I was going to be free of the panic. And also my pattern for quitting. So at the same time, I had a pattern for quitting. And as I started to apply what I was learning through that journal, my life changed night and day, night and day. I mean, first of all, the panic attack stopped. In about 4 weeks, I realized that I hadn't had a panic attack in about 4 weeks. And I went, holy moly, there's something happening here. And also this desire to quit that had always been my go-to just disappeared. It was as if I stepped out of one identity into another. I was in an identity in which quitting was absolutely possible. It was my go-to, into an identity in which it just didn't even enter my mind. And when I realized that, Tracy, I went, okay, I got to change the operating instructions out there in the world and teach people how to work with their brain patterns. And so that's what I did.
What I love about that is that you didn't just take a class and follow somebody else's methodology, but I believe that was total spirit led. And this was given to you as a gift. At least that's what I'm feeling right now, that this was a gift for you to go and help mankind.
Yes,
To help
definitely.
humans.
Definitely. I remember,
Cool.
when I was first teaching this, and of course I was nervous to put it out there because it's brand new and it's different and nobody else was teaching it. And so, I kept journaling going, oh gosh, I'm not ready to do this. I just can't do this. And my journal kept writing back, well, who do you want me to get then? Like, just go do it. So, so I understand what you're saying. It did really feel like spirit was driving me and that I had no choice.
Oh my gosh. I just got the shivers from that. That is cool. That is so cool. So what do you find is the most common issue that people are stuck in? Like, what do you find, to see? What do you see a lot of?
Well, I think that right now, one of the biggest things that we're facing is stress and stress related illnesses, so anxiety and things like that. And in order to understand where that high level of stress is coming from today, we need to dive into the brain and understand how the brain works. So the human brain is not like other animals. We're not born knowing what to do. We're born having to learn everything. So from the moment we enter this planet, we have to take the situations that we're in, take the learning from those situations and store it away in our brain in the form of patterns. So every situation that we enter into and survive just basically means we get to the next situation. Our brain takes that action that we took at that time and stores it away for future use. Okay. Now, back in the days where we lived in small villages and life was pretty predictable, you would know what you were going to do because that was what your parents did, right? And their parents before them, and you knew everybody in the town, and there was very little new that was coming out. So back in those days, it worked that our brain would create patterns in our youth and throughout our childhood and then continue to use those throughout our adulthood. But today the world is sped up to the point where those old patterns that we created when we were little are just no longer effective. It's not that they're bad or wrong, they just need an upgrade because the world has changed and we need change along with it. Our brain needs to change with it. And that is truly the source of all of our stress. There's only one problem on the planet today, And that problem is that nobody has taught us how to upgrade an obsolete pattern that no longer works. As soon as we know how to do that, all of the conflicts melt away. All of our internal suffering and struggles just melt away. And we take optimal actions that fit the situation we're in. And that's what we're being invited to do now. The world is set up. We need to change along with it.
Okay. That sounds complicated to me. Um, so for instance, like when you started working with yourself, I mean, you got this download or what is it called? Automatic writing, right? That
Yes.
you were doing this writing and you were told to work on you first. Okay. What's the process like?
Yeah.
And how long does this take?
Right. So, fascinating stuff is coming out of neuroscience today that we didn't know 25, 30 years ago because we didn't have the modern brain scanners to peek inside the human brain in a non-invasive way. And so neuroscience is now moving in to support us in teaching us how to change this brain patterns of ours. So the first thing that every person listening needs to know is your brain has plasticity. That simply means that it is constantly rewiring itself. That's all that means. So it's unlike how we used to think of the human brain, which was once you enter adulthood, you're pretty much fixed and you're stuck with those patterns. Not true. Your brain is constantly trying to upgrade. We just need to give it a method to do that. So what I teach is actually very, very simple, but simple is not easy, okay? So what I teach is a 4-step method to first remove an old pattern that's not working and then upgrade it with a new one. And the 4 steps are first, let's identify the pattern itself. So how I'd like every listener to think of your brain is an iceberg. At the top of the water are all of your actions, all of your behaviors, all of your beliefs. Everything you believe, every behavior you adopt, you're going to put it up the surface of the water. Under the water is where the brain patterns lie. So a brain pattern gives rise to an action, a behavior, a belief. We're used to working only at the level of action, behavior, belief, right? And there's 2 ways we're told to do that. Control your actions, use willpower, stop doing what you're doing. And the thought is that will eventually trickle down, change your behavior, trickle down, change your belief about yourself, okay? So push through your fears, do it anyway, get out on the stage, stop eating, right? And the thought is that will eventually make you a public speaker. It will eventually make you somebody who doesn't eat sugar, for example, okay? That's one way we're taught. Second way we're taught is change your belief, and that's supposed to trickle up, change your behavior, trickle up, change your action. So change the way you see yourself, do an affirmation, tell yourself that you're powerful even though you don't feel like it. Eventually, that's supposed to trickle in and change all of this stuff going upwards. Okay, for me, neither one of those was very effective. So instead of all of that, let's instead identify the pattern that is giving rise to those actions, those behaviors, those beliefs. So a pattern, we recognize a pattern because it's an intertwined physical sensation, emotion, and thought. When the 3 aspects of your being come together, they result in a particular action, a particular behavior, a particular belief, okay? So it's a physical sensation, an emotion, and a thought. That's step 1. Now, let's do this together. Let's say that somebody has a goal that they're trying to achieve. And when they think about taking that goal, they feel afraid and their stomach clenches. And their thought is, but I can't do that. Good. You've just identified the pattern that stops you from taking a step towards that goal. Okay. All right. Great. Step 2 is to own that as a pattern. So, the interesting thing about our human brain is it doesn't really have any access to the outside world. And I'm going to say that again because it's really important that we understand that. It's behind a dark and silent room. It's within a dark and silent room. It's behind a skull, okay? And information coming in through our senses, through our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our nose, but our brain has to interpret that information based on what it's learned in its past. So when we know that, we get to own that as our pattern. Yeah, I'm feeling scared right now, but that doesn't mean that I am somebody who should be afraid. That means I have a pattern that is afraid. See the difference? Okay. So if we stop thinking about the outside world and start looking at me, that's my pattern that is acting in this way, now we get our power back. It's like, okay, I can own that. That's my pattern. Right? And that's step two. We're going to own it as a pattern. And then the third step is we're going to deconstruct or tease apart that pattern. And if you just think of a neural pathway in your brain, I just have a very simple way for just upgrading it, causing it to snap into new channels. And we do that just through a process of observation. And then the fourth step, that only then can we start the process of creating a new pattern. We must remove the old one first. And that is the key step that is missing in our culture. We think we can just jump to the new action without first addressing the old one.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And so do you see clients one-on-one, or do you do group sessions, or how do you facilitate this?
I do both. So some people have very private areas that they want to work on and they don't want to work in a group. And if that's the case, then I have some one-on-one spots and I work with groups as well. The beautiful thing about this, though, is it's not therapy. I'm actually teaching a tool. I like to say I put the tool in your pocket so that no matter what you face in the future, you'll just be able to apply these 4 steps and then take a different action. So once somebody knows the steps, and it does take 6 to 8 weeks to learn the steps and to understand how it works in your brain and to start getting the results. But once you've got those, it's a 2-minute technique done in the privacy of your own head. And it's like, bring it on, world. Come on, let's go. Because no matter what it is that you bump up against, you've got the tool to deal with it.
Wow. I know somebody I'm very close with that. I think he would benefit from this. He's just stuck,
Yeah.
and anxiety, like all of that, all the stuff that you've said.
Yeah, well, I work a lot with people who have, like me, that I did everything, 10 years of spinning my wheels. Many people come to me like that and say, okay, I've done it all, now what, right? And it's such a breath of fresh air to understand patterns and to know that it's not you, it's just a pattern. And that's really, really important for every person in this world today to understand. We swim in a world of blame and shame, because we are not taught that all it is a pattern that's in our way. As soon as we learn that, it's like, oh yeah, okay, it's a pattern. I can address that. I can do something about that.
Yeah. And so they probably take the onus off of themselves, that it's not like I suck at this or that, but it's just a pattern I need to change.
That's it. Exactly. So if anybody asks you why you did that, here's your answer: because my pattern made me. Okay, now that doesn't let you off the hook, unfortunately, or fortunately. We still have to address the underlying pattern, but at least you can know that you're not responsible for the action, the behavior, the belief. The pattern is responsible for that. You are able to respond to the pattern itself.
Okay. So how does this translate? Well, for you especially, like, how did this translate to you letting go of anxiety, for instance? I'm really trying to figure out like what you did for yourself, because it's like anxiety is something that you like feel like you can't control, right?
Right, exactly. So in my case, I had to recognize that my panic attacks was a pattern. I had a pattern in my brain that panicked. That was the best way to say it. In my case, I had all the physical sensations that went along with panic, the rigidity, the freezing, the shaking, the heat, all of that. Okay. And then I had to recognize, oh yeah, there's an emotion here, an emotion of deep fear, of panic that is arising. There was thoughts that were going through my mind. My mind was scrambling, trying to understand why panic was necessary, and then would drop into white noise when it couldn't figure it out, right? And then it was just spinning. Okay, great. Knowing that's a pattern, though, allows us to start that process of flipping the switch. Initially, I was thinking there's something wrong with me. Well, there's nothing wrong with you if you just have a pattern in your brain that's panicking, right? It's just, okay, I have a pattern for panicking. So that's the first thing. The mind tries to put you into an identity in which you have to understand yourself first before you can change something. Frankly, that's a bit of a waste of time. Just identify the pattern, okay? And then the second thing was I had to tease apart that pattern. I had to remove the intertwining between those physical sensations, that emotion of panic, and this thought process that my mind was doing. As soon as I was able to tease that apart, then the panic just lessened. It was like it went from panic to fear to hardly anything to concern to just melting away altogether. So as I said, it's a very simple technique, but simple isn't easy initially when we're first learning how to do it. And it really does require one of the steps. The third step is a step of surrendered observation. It's just observing what's going on without judging it, without being attached to it, without needing it to change. As soon as you do that, your mind's able to see, oh yeah, this pattern isn't working, your subconscious mind, and it just lets it go.
Wow. That sounds like a miracle.
It feels like a miracle. Like people say to me, Adele, you're a wizard. I'm not. I'm just teaching you how your brain works. All right. I just got off the call with one client. She says, you're a wizard. This is a miracle. But it is honestly, Tracy, the way that our brain is designed to function. Our brain is designed to consistently upgrade. The only reason that we don't know that is because we aren't taught that from birth. If you grew up in a world in which patterns were just part and parcel of the conversation, nobody would have any of these issues.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of beneficial things, be it nutrition, movement, lifestyle practices, are not taught. I would love to see the curriculum change to our kids so that they learn different skills than, Addie, or just like all this ridiculous stuff that they teach our kids. Like, this is something that I think could help create success for everyone. It sounds like anybody can benefit from this.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked with people before I understood repatterning. And, when I asked them how successful they were, it was somewhere between a 4 and 25% success rate on most things that they were trying to achieve. With repatterning, we consistently, our repatterning groups get an 87% success rate. I mean, that is night and day because your brain is designed for success. I like to say happiness, peace of mind, that's your birthright. It lives there underneath all of the anxiety that we're faced with today. When we know how to upgrade a pattern, you will not only achieve a success, but you'll do so with happiness and with peace of mind at the same time.
Do you ever do like live workshops or things like that?
I used to do everything live before COVID hit, Tracy, everything. Like I did I shouldn't say everything. I would do some of my front-end marketing online, and then I would teach some initial classes online, but mostly I would teach everything in live events. And then COVID hit and it was like, oh, we're in a different world. So now I took everything online, and now I might integrate back some live events because people have requested them, especially retreats and things like that, like real intensive repatterning, especially with my work with couples. So I work a lot with couples who are on the verge of divorce. They become like newlyweds again within 6 weeks. They really appreciate that retreat setting where they can just be together and repattern together.
What if they're not on the brink of divorce, but they want to feel like a newlywed again?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who is struggling in conflict in their relationship, to understand patterns is so freeing. It's like, oh, there's a pattern. There's no shame and there's no blame when we are pattern makers, when we understand that our brain is just creating patterns, and it creates massive amounts of freedom. from conflict, and freedom from the shame that we put on ourselves and the guilt and all of that stuff.
Wow.
I like to
Okay.
say every person in every relationship is a center gear in a machine. And think of all the other relationships around you as gears. Now, just imagine if you could just gently reach in and just start turning that center gear in an opposite direction. Okay. If you don't do it gently enough, you're in danger of
Mm.
breaking apart those relationships and everybody scatters and goes their own way. But do it really gently, which is what happens through repatterning, and all the other gears have to change in relationship to yours. So there is power understanding how you're reacting and knowing that those reactions are just patterns, knowing how to upgrade those patterns and changing those reactions. It automatically changes the family dynamic and changes the workplace dynamic, changes classrooms. I had a teacher do it in the classroom. Her entire classroom changed. And it's just remarkable the power that we have within ourselves.
Yeah, I feel like I could benefit from that. There's a couple things I feel like I do that I don't intend to do it. It's just like a reaction
Yeah.
when somebody says something to me that I completely disagree with. I oftentimes I'm like a tiger, like what? Or like no, you know what I mean? Like instead of I find myself talking to myself after the fact going, why didn't you ask more questions and try to create more of a conversation to help yourself understand what they meant by that instead of just being defensive and just kind of pouncing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
or I do
Yeah,
the absolute opposite and I don't say a word and I just suck it up and go, oh my gosh, like in my head, right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe they think that, but I wish I would just like be more engaging and say, well, why do you think that? Just because that's how we learn, right? Is asking more questions.
yeah, yeah. And now you know why, because you have a pattern that reacts that way. That's it.
So what are some of your like top stories with clients that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that that she was able to change or he or whatever. What are some
Yeah, I mean,
excitement things?
one of the beautiful things that we do is every person starts with a what I call a deep dive list. So when they come to me first, it's like, okay, let's choose an area of concern. So they'll choose anything, right? So some people choose conflicts in their relationship, others choose health or wellness or goal setting or business. And then I say, okay, we're going to find out all the actions that you're doing that are not working, all the behaviors you're adopting, like that one that you just said, Tracy, all the beliefs, right? And we just list them all. So they've come away with a list of about 20, 25 items. And then they start learning the repatterning process. And by the 8th week, by the time they finish the program, they're like crossing off their list, going, I don't know why I wrote this. Honestly, I don't know why I put this item on my list. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. This just no longer applies. And it's literally like that. Like they just step out of one identity into another identity, and that whole list just collapses like a house of cards. Okay. And it can be anything. I mean, I've worked with people who have deep patterns for stress and anxiety and things like that. Or it can be goal setting, like I want a business and I'm not doing that, or I want a better career and I'm not doing that. Now, the beautiful thing about repatterning is that you don't know what your next action is going to be. It will be optimal and take care of you. And so, like I can just give you some quick examples, and they're so surprising. Like one woman, she was really struggling to get a job. And she went she must have gone for 50 interviews and was rejected each and every time. Learned repatterning, went to her very next interview. She said she was sitting there, and normally she would have felt nervous and uncomfortable and kind of been watching what she was saying. You know how you do that in an interview? What should I say next? And she found herself just totally relaxed. And at one point, they said to her, so, do you have anything else that you'd like to share? And she said, yes, I would really, really like to work here. I really am enjoying this interview and I'd love to work here. And she walked out afterwards and she said, oh, I can't believe I said that. But they were delighted by that response. It was absolutely optimal. She got the job. She loves the job. So it's that level of surprise that people start to experience. And it happens time and time again. And it doesn't matter how long somebody's been stuck in an action that hasn't worked for them. So I had another woman, she was 12 years without a date, repatterned, not only started dating, but within 3 months was living with a guy, and they're still together since. And that must have been, 8 years ago. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. It's that remarkable. So anything can be changed if you know how to work with your brain.
Wow. Do you find that a lot of these patterns are buried within the subconscious or the unconscious, which honestly, I don't know the difference between those two, rather than in the conscious mind?
Yeah. So the thing that's most tricky, the place where I come most in handy is helping people to identify those lists initially, because we are so used to seeing ourselves through the filter of the pattern. Okay, so not if I've just made sense. I hope that just made sense. So we have a pattern, and the pattern is filtering the situation through itself and seeing the world in that light. Okay, and we tend to believe that pattern and believe what it says about us and about the world. So, if I take that woman who hadn't been on a date in 12 years, she was strongly convinced that she had to behave more femininely in order to be attractive. And so she was constantly putting on this, trying to put on a facade of femininity, right? Okay, well, that wasn't actually the problem at all. I can't remember off the top of my head what the problem was, but that's how her brain was trying to correct the problem. But when she talked to me, it was just clear what the actions, behaviors, beliefs were. And then she could go to work on the right issue. So, yeah, to answer your question, it's tricky to see ourselves. It's really tricky to identify what it is that we're doing or not doing that we should be doing, right? And that's where a good coach can really help.
So do you train up coaches also, or are you a one-woman show for now?
Not yet. That is the next step in the process. I will be training facilitators and helping them to do those deep dives. And it's an intuitive form of listening. It's listening beneath the surface, as you say, right? And then pulling out, extracting those patterns from all the noise the mind tends to put into the space.
Gosh, that sounds exciting. Now, your courses, your 8-week courses, are those something that anybody can jump into, or do you just start one every other month, or how does that work?
Yeah, I run about 4 years, so I start one a quarter. And yes, I keep them small, so they're first come, first serve basis. But anybody can jump in. And in those courses, in that 8-week course, they do get a deep dive with me. So we do a 90-minute call leading into that course where you come away with your complete list of items that by the end of that 8 weeks, you're crossing it off going, I don't know why I wrote this. So that's my guarantee.
Oh, cool.
Remember
Oh,
I said that 87% reach that goal.
yeah.
So the few people who don't, the like not even handful, the trickle who don't, they just come into the next course for free, because I guarantee that you will be able to use this tool and use it effectively.
Wow. That's so cool. That's so exciting. You have no idea. Well, I'm sure you do. And then you wrote a book, right? Can
I
you tell
did.
us about that?
Yeah, so the book is called Shift: 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment, and it is about brains and brain patterning, and the entire technique is in there. And for some people who can do it themselves, that's enough. Now, like I said, that's tricky because it's hard to see ourselves, but the entire method is in there. And I love to gift that book for free. All I ask is people pay for shipping. Because honestly, Tracy, my goal on this planet is to start a movement. We need to upgrade these patterns, not just for our own peace of mind, but for the peace of the planet and to reduce these conflicts. We
Yeah.
started talking about Ukraine and all that. It's like, yeah, we really need to understand the power of our own brain and the brilliance of it at a whole different level than how we're seeing it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that a movement to shift our planet and our people into a higher vibration is key. But if they're stuck in that loop or that pattern, people have a hard time focusing on those high vibration feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's a little deeper than that. I mean, if you think about how patterns work in the brain, there are a person's individual patterns, but then we all swim within group patterns, and those group patterns we're born into, and those are not working. They are theoretical models that don't actually fit our subjective experience when we actually tune in. And that's why we make ourselves wrong inside those group models. Okay.
Interesting.
And then there's humanity patterns that every single person on this planet shares. And some of those don't work. And so, all of that needs to be changed, but it starts with individual patterns. It starts with a person first recognizing, oh yeah, I have a pattern within my brain that is not working for me, that is causing me suffering. Remove that, upgrade it. Eventually, when enough of us do that, it will start to change those group patterns. And then it'll ripple out and change all of humanity patterns.
Okay, that seems like it's going to take a long time, especially if there's only one of you.
I got to train up a few facilitators, don't I? For sure. But most people, especially probably your listeners, have heard of the 100 monkey syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And I'm starting to see it now. So I have to say, I'm really excited.
Why don't you explain that, Adele? Sorry to interrupt. Why don't you explain that really quick for people who don't know what that means?
So I think it comes from a Japanese story. And I think, what happened was there was a bunch of scientists and they were observing some monkeys on a particular island. And these monkeys, they would put food in the sand. The scientists would put.
Yeah, they dropped them from airplanes.
Okay, good. And we'll do this together then, because I know bits of it. And one very clever monkey, she took the food and she went down to the water and washed it. And then she taught all the other monkeys on her island to wash the food. So she taught all of those. As soon as the 100 monkeys, or however many who lived on that island, knew to wash their food, all the monkeys on another island that was totally not connected to the island that these monkeys were on started washing their food, and it was as if they got it through the air, we'll call it, right? Like they just gained that wisdom, that knowledge,
like a quantum entanglement.
Yeah, and we see it amongst human beings. When enough human beings learn a new skill or change something, it's like on the other side of the world, that same knowledge pops up, even though there is no connection between these groups. Okay. Now that's harder for us to see today because we're so interconnected with technology and things like that, but it does still happen. And I'm starting to see it, Tracy. The most exciting thing about repatterning is 10 years ago when I first started teaching this, it was an uphill climb. I would talk to people about brain patterns and they would look at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Okay. I would talk to them about the 4 steps and they would it was a lot of work. And at that time, the very first group that I did, about 50% of the people in that group got it and were able to carry on. Today, there's no longer that block anymore. I'm just speaking right into their listening, and they're just absorbing it. And it's true for every single person who I'm encountering today, every single participant that I have. It's like all of that resistance is just melted away. Now that's exciting. That's what's happened in the last 10 years. So I want to imagine another 10 years of that, right? So, honestly, I think it takes one generation, I have heard, if we change the narrative in the culture, to change the next generation. So within this generation, we can actually do this.
That's
we
cool.
Just need 100 monkeys.
So I'm going to ask you a question. So going back to the beginning, have you had any more experiences with the automatic writing?
Yeah, I still do it all the time. It's a process. So I once I learned the 4 steps through my journal, it's gone on to teach me about relationships, to teach me about creativity. It has come up with a whole method to repattern leadership. And it's interesting, Tracy, like sometimes I actually have to Google terminology. I write it and I don't know what it means. And I actually have to go and Google it. So
Wow.
one of the terms for leadership that was coming through was when we understand brain patterning and everybody knows how to repattern their brain, it's going to transform leadership. And it was saying leadership will no longer be a hierarchy, it will be a heterarchy. And at the time I didn't know what that meant. And I went, what? And I'm writing this word heterarchy and I'm going, okay, I guess I better go Google that. Anyway, that's exciting.
What does it mean?
A heterarchy is a fluid hierarchy. So think of leadership as being directly related to the skills that are required within the group at the time in the situation. And a leader bubbles up to the surface to take the leadership role as they hold those skills and then drops back into a fellowship role when those skills are no longer needed and the next leader rises up. And that's what's going to happen inside leadership in the future. Okay.
I just got a vision of the birds flying in the, and they come back and they come back into the pattern, and then they lead for a while and then they switch and bring somebody else up.
Yes, like the geese. Yes, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, I see geese.
That's a heterarchy.
I have a big thing with birds. I don't know what it is, but for the last, say, I don't know, 6 months, wild birds let me hold them.
Oh, wow.
I know, and pet them. And it's weird. Like I've held several in my hand. So far, I think I've had 6 instances. Even I was at the beach one day and I was kind of talking to a bird subconsciously because it got hurt and I was doing Reiki and I said, come on over here and let me do Reiki on you. And it literally walked up to me and I had my hands up because I was doing it anyway. And then it started nibbling on my fingers. And then I took a nap, then it sauntered off and I took a nap. And my husband said it came back and did a loop out around me. It was looking at me. And it's just been weird. Like, I don't know why, but weird things with birds.
Beautiful. Oh, I love it. It really, I mean, to me, I'm just seeing all these exciting changes that are occurring on the planet. And we're all entering the flow. Okay. So the moment is always flowing. And I think we're all becoming more connected to that on some level. Now, of course, there's a lot of polarization, guys, so please don't misunderstand me. I know there's a lot of dichotomy that is also occurring out there. But at the same time, it's like there's 2 different movements that are occurring at once, right? There's the polarization, which is dividing and separating us. And then there's this flow, which you're beautifully speaking about, Tracy, where we're all sentient beings are coming together.
Yes.
Connecting. Yeah.
Yes. I'm seeing it. Like my show used to be purely about like health and fitness. And now it's turned into spirituality. A lot of different spiritual things and conversations are happening. And it's interesting. And
well, it's funny you say that, because if I can interrupt you, if you don't mind.
No,
I never come to a podcast knowing what I'm going to talk about. So obviously, your listeners obviously are in this spiritual need or want at this moment, and you're just bringing that. So good for you.
No, I have no idea. It's just evolved that way. And so you said something else about the polarization. There's a great quote. I love quotes and stories. Okay. So it said, red ants and black ants will live in a jar together very peacefully. If you go up and you shake the jar, they start fighting against each other.
Oh, interesting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
So you add the stress and then the conflicts start.
Yeah. So stop
Right.
shaking the damn jars, people. Like, just be, just be in
Yes.
love. Like, that's
Yes.
what I think. So I really want to take your class. When is the next one coming up?
I have one starting in April. I will send you the exact dates. April,
Cool.
it's Wednesday. It's on
We'll
my
put it in
website.
the show notes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'd love for you to be there. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very interested. And I think that, I mean, I seriously think that there's not a single person on this planet that wouldn't benefit from this work.
I agree. Because even if you just take it just to learn the tool, just to learn about your brain, the, like I said before, we really swim in this left brain world. We didn't even get into the hemispheres, so you can have me back, Tracy, if you want. We really swim in this left brain world
Cool.
that is so shaming and so blaming. So even just to be able to free yourself up from that noise is like, oh, all the suffering just melts away. It's just gone. It's like, oh yeah, it's a pattern. And that kind of attitude. And I'm not diminishing anybody's
So what
pain.
are,
Please don't hear it like that. It's just, I like to say we have two choices. We have the choice to repattern, or we have the choice to suffer. Those are the choices we have.
yeah, that makes sense. So have you, through all your work, have you developed any personal habits that you feel like are really beneficial to your growth or your joy?
Um, I am becoming more of what my journal invited me to be in probably one of our very first automatic writing sessions. It said, Adele, learn how to walk through any door, not knowing who you're going to be. Learn how to walk through the door as the situation requires you to be, and arise into that situation. And so that's what I'm becoming more and more of. I'm not going to use the word I'm striving to be there, because I'm not. It is a state of being. But to really understand patterns is to know that your brain is, the subconscious regions of the brain are much more aware, much wiser than the conscious regions of our brain. We have it flipped. Freud taught us the subconscious regions of our brain are to be feared and will sabotage us. That's not true. The conscious brain, what we believe ourselves to be, is very limited, and it only is seeing a partial picture, whereas the subconscious regions of our brain sees a much broader perspective. When we can let go of what we think we know, we arise as we need to be, as the situation requires us to be.
Hmm. I like that. It's almost like your authentic self. It's almost like you walk into a situation and you just be whatever you are, instead of putting on this persona, walking into a room and having to be all that,
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
my oldest son, he lives in New York City and he always wants to look good,
Yeah.
and I'm not like that. Like, I'll go to the store after the gym workout with mascara under my eyes,
That
and
from the gym?
I don't care anymore. I guess I'm too old to worry. I don't know. My soreness. Yes. Um, but I think that it's important to just let go, and then other people have permission to let go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Together we're very interconnected beings. Like, we're very social creatures. We really can't have a reaction without somebody else having a reaction. We think we're very independent, but we're not, right?
yeah,
And so just to be able to just arise optimally as other people need us to arise optimally for ourselves and for who we need to be in that situation. There's freedom in that, there's joy in that, and there's a heck of a lot of peace in that. And I'm so
yeah,
grateful that I'm on the path to being that, rather than how I used to be, which was always so painful, like a lot of suffering, because I would have to know and have to look good all the time, right?
yeah,
And there was a lot of
yeah.
suffering in that.
Well, I love it. I love that word peace. That's like one of my favorite words. Just love, joy, peace has like been my mantra when I do yoga for a very long time. And there's this little 75-year-old lady who hikes up this hill by me. It's about 1.8-mile climb, pretty much straight up, 75 years old. And she has a stick and she carves a peace sign, a happy face, and a heart, which is
lovely.
opposite, but it's love, joy, peace, right? And here's another funny story. So I ran into two friends at the park this morning and they said, oh, be careful. There's a mountain lion up there. I'm like, really? I've never seen it. And so they were telling that little 75-year-old lady, be careful. There's a mountain lion up there. And she's small. And she says, oh, no big deal. I see it all the time. You just want to be big and scary. I'm like, oh my gosh, little 75-year-old badass. That's what she is.
That's amazing.
I don't know how I got on that rabbit trail. So yeah, that's what I was wondering. How can people find you?
So the best bet, well, it's two places. So if you want a copy of my book, go to shift4steps.com. So shift, SHIFT, number 4, steps with an S.com. You can get a free copy of my book. All I ask is you pay for shipping. Just click on that link. You can also get access, free training to the Pattern Maker Hub through that link as well. So just click on either one of those two links and it'll take you to the free stuff. If you want to join a class and join Tracy, then come to adelespraggon.com and all the information for how to join a group class is there, and you'll book right onto my calendar and we'll do that deep dive.
And that's ADELESPRAGGON.com.
Right.
Cool. Well, I'm telling you, you are lovely. And I'm so thankful to meet you and hear that you came up with an approach to help all of us with getting unstuck. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, and thank you for helping me spread the word. And yeah, let's do that movement together.
Oh, I would love to lock arms.
Cool.
Wow, wow, wow. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for listening. Adele is amazing. And I hope to see each and every one of you in the 8-week course that starts in April. Please check out our website at adelespraggon.com. That's ADELESPRAGGON.com. And for complete show notes, head on over to highenergygirl.com/show. Go out and make it a great day, everyone. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.